All right, let's do another 20 minutes on the basic understanding of how a cardiac monitor works. Okay, so let's see if I can get this thing to click. There we go. So I'm not going to read to you because, I think you can read. So this guy, Einthoven, so let's start with electrocardiography. EKG or ECG, they mean the same thing as Greek. Cardia means heart. So this is the first machine here. It was invented by Einthoven. You had to put your foot and two of your arms in buckets of saline water. It weighed several tons and you needed like 5 people to run the dang thing. So that was William Einthoven, 1901. Pretty crazy. He's the one who named the P, Q, S, and T wave. It was arbitrary because A, B, and C and all that was already taken. So he picked the P, Q, S, T. He won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1924 because of his invention. It's pretty crazy. And we've gone from this big giant machine to these little Holter monitors that basically people can take showers in now. So it's crazy the leap in technology. This is Einthoven's triangle. And basically, if you think back to that picture, they have their left foot in a bucket of saline and both their hands in buckets of saline. Those were the lead views back then. And basically, it just triangulates the electrical impulse from the heart. Not to get too crazy about it, but somewhere right in the middle of this triangle, you have something called Wilson's central terminus. And it just means it's an electrical neutral spot on the triangle. And all it's doing is detecting movement towards the positive electrode or away from it. These are electrodes. And what they do is, and you can see in the picture, is they're just sensing the electrical activity, hopefully in the heart, but you could have artifact where it's screwing up these impulses. So what we need to do is try to reduce all the artifact, all the other impulses, and focus just on the heart to get better tracing. So the key to all this is gel penetration, really. You have to give good conductive gel and prepped skin to get good tracing. So if you ever have someone that says they hate whatever brand of cardiac monitor because they are not getting good tracings, they should try to change electrodes or prep the skin before they try to obtain an ECG reading. So the strategy really is to overcome hair, dead skin cells, and oils. Some people carry these shavers, most don't, but everyone carries 2x2s and alcohol pads. And really, you can just abrade the skin, and that will get rid of those oils and a lot of dead skin cells. Some of the electrodes have a little piece of sandpaper on them that you can use to abrade the skin, and you get better gel penetration. Bling, there's our skin. Gel penetration. Always try to keep your electrodes fresh. So we, like at Shaw, we don't run a lot of calls out here. We keep our electrodes in the foil pack. So I know if you're really busy services like Florence and Sumter, they're not going to dry out. But if you're at a slower service, don't have them pre-connected to the leads and set in the sun, because if the conductive gel dries out, you're not going to get good tracings. Limb lead position is pretty simple. They need to be out on the limbs. Most of the time with EMS, we're moving them closer to the torso because it reduces artifact. If you're doing just a rate and rhythm interpretation, these leads can be up here on the chest, and these leads can be moved up to the torso up here. If you're planning on doing a diagnostic 12 lead, so you want to get a rate and rhythm, but then you're going to get a diagnostic 12 lead, you want your limb leads out at least on the deltoids, and you want your leg leads lower than where the trunk meets the leg. So, and let's say you have a patient that's got a amputation on one side. You don't want one of the leads way down here on the left foot and then the other one's up above the right, where the right knee used to be. You want them about the same height. How those electrodes work when they're picking up the impulse, they really are just detecting if the electrical impulse is moving closer to them, like you see my finger here, or further away. So we'll say this camera here is our cardiac limb lead. If that electrical impulse starts here and goes a little bit closer, you can see it gets bigger in the screen on on your screen. Well, if you see me in the corner here, if it gets closer, it even gets bigger. And that's all it's doing. It's detecting the movement of the electrical impulse. And if it's the electrical impulse is going away from the lead, well, then it's going to show a negative deflection on the paper. So in this picture here, we have a lead down here on the patient's left side and one up on the right shoulder. And this would be the positive electrode where the eyeball is. So that's the camera's like the positive electrode. And the other one on the left shoulder is the negative electrode. So the eyeball of that camera is always the positive electrode, and it looks for wherever the negative electrode is. So it's only going to be looking at the negative electrode. So as you can see here, as the impulse leaves that SA node and it follows its kind of normal path through the heart, from the base of the heart to the apex of the heart, it comes closer to that electrode. So it's coming towards the electrode, excuse me. And as it goes away, while it wraps around the ventricle, then it goes away. And what you're left with is this like QRS looking complex. Another interesting thing is when they were first figuring how to do these tracings, they would put photography plates on toy trains and run them by like a projector. And then that's how they would hold them up and see what these waveforms look like. So there's our P wave, our QRS complex, and the T wave. And we'll talk about what these things mean. The sinus node is up here. It is the pacemaker of the heart. We'll go through all those. This is the AV node. Its job is to protect the ventricles. This is an interventricular pathway or internodal pathway, interventricular in this case. Bundle of His splits off to a right and a left bundle branch. And then down here at the very end, you have your Purkinje fibers. So let's talk about this SA node. It has the highest metabolic rate of the heart. I wonder if I can draw on this thing. Oh, look at that. Hopefully that comes across on your screen. So yeah, now I don't know how to erase it though. It's kind of funny. So this has its own, of course, they all have automaticity, and it has its own intrinsic rate of 60 to 100. Oh, there is an eraser. Wild. So that's kind of the first zone there that can create an impulse. It fires off at 60 to 100 times a minute. Anything slower than 60 is Brady. Anything faster than 100 is tachycardia. Yeah. So the whole job of that is to set the pace of the heart. And what happens is, which I'm not sure if I draw it well on these, but now that I know I can draw something, let's draw something. Use this color. Whenever this impulse leaves the SA node and goes to the AV node, we have this positive electrode sitting over here. And remember, that's the eyeball that's looking at the negative electrode. And because this impulse started here and went to there, it's actually going to show a little positive bump on the ECG paper. Isn't that fancy? So the P wave represents atrial depolarization. Now I don't know how to change this slide though. Okay, oh, I could turn the annotation off. And here we have it on the paper. P wave equals atrial depolarization and hopefully atrial contraction. And it's just the movement of the electricity from the SA node, what's the wrong one, to the AV node. It allows for atrial kick, and depending on which book you're reading, anywhere I've seen it from 5% to 15 to 20% of cardiac output is atrial kick. So most healthy people can live without atrial kick, but there's some people that have to have it. The next one we'll talk about is the AV node. The AV node its whole job is to protect the ventricles. It allows for atrial kick, It slows down, and it doesn't stop the impulse. It just slows it down. And I'll tell you, this AV node is really cool for a number of reasons, but I'll try to draw it on the next slide where I have some room. But the pathway that comes to the AV node, one side of it, the right side of it, it's just like a highway that goes in circles. And then it goes down through the bundle of his. And so the impulse doesn't actually stop. It keeps moving, but it's sitting in one spot. Imagine that highway now has a dirt road, a bumpy dirt road. Let me just draw it out. So if I can, I'll do my best. So over here, we'll say this is the pathway coming into this AV node. This highway keeps on going, but it goes in circles. And then the highway flushes out past the AV node on down through the bundle of his. So all these electrical impulses can follow this fast pathway and stay on the highway and keep on going. Or there's a little single lane dirt road over here with potholes on it. And some of those electrical impulses can follow this dirt road. And I like to think of it as when I leave my house and I live in the woods, I go to the Dollar General. There's two ways I can get to the Dollar General. I can stay on the hard surface and drive all the way down to the River Road and down by Randolph's Landing and come back to the Dollar General. And I can go 65 miles an hour, as long as I don't see any deer or anything. And I'll get there in, I don't know, 8 minutes. Or there's actually a road called Shaw Drive that cuts through a block of woods, and it puts you out right near the Dollar General. So, or I could take that dirt road, that bumpy little dirt road, it's all sand, and I can drive slower, but it's a shorter pathway, and I can get to the Dollar General, and it takes about 8 minutes. So I could go either direction. Let's say my wife and I both leave the house. She takes all the way down to the River Road and down, and I take my little bumpy pathway. We're going to both flush out on Highway 260 at the same time and keep going. Interesting thing about this AV node, there's a bunch of interesting things about it, is if you have a right coronary artery dominant heart, that means the right coronary artery is perfusing this node. So these are my coronary arteries coming off the right side, perfusing the node. It's not too bad. You can't make fun of me for that. So this is our RCA, right coronary artery, at least a branch of it. And it has these marginals that come off of it. Well, if you have some dysfunction to this right coronary artery, it basically shuts down the fast pathway through that AV node. And the left coronary artery, hopefully, I'm going to use a different color for the left coronary artery. Use pink. So this is our left coronary artery. It's still perfusing the dirt road. So isn't that a really good backup plan? It gets a little bit of its perfusion from the right coronary artery and a little bit from the left. So if you have some dysfunction in that right coronary artery, you could see some bradycardic dysrhythmias. Another interesting thing is so you just need to know that it doesn't stop the impulse. It actually keeps it moving one way and it keeps going slowly the other. They meet at the same time and flush out through the bundle it is. Another interesting thing is there's different zones of the AV node that have parasympathetic innervation, means they can be stimulated by parasympathetic response. And an easy one to think about is a vagal maneuver. Whenever you get someone to bear down, like they're going to have a bowel movement, blow into that 5 ml syringe, kick their legs up in the air. That's like the new one. There's different zones for this AV node that have parasympathetic nerve, and there's zones that don't. And the lower you get, the less parasympathetic response you'll have. So let me draw this in a different color. This is some next level stuff, but I think you'll understand this simple concept. So this area up here, oh, can you see the yellow? Let me change that color. change it to brown. This area up here, I'm going to call these different degrees. This is the first degree up here. This area up here will respond to vagal response. If you have some dysfunction and you're trying to figure out if the rate that you're having is due to some type of AV node, a junctional rhythm, like say accelerated junctional, you can have the patient bear down. And if they bear down and they respond to it, then that dysfunction is in that first degree, that first slice. There's another area here, second degree. Oops. And some of this, most of this will still have response to parasympathetic stuff. And I'm going to split this up into 1 and 2. So second degree 1, second degree 2. And then the lower you go, though, the less parasympathetic receptor sites you have. So then on this lower part down here, this is zone number 3, and it has no parasympathetic receptor sites. So let me back it up to kind of make it all make sense. Let's say your patient has a slow dysrhythmia, and you think that it's due to an increased vagal tone, increased parasympathetic response. You can push a medication that blocks the acetylcholine. It's an anticholinergic called atropine, and atropine will speed up the heart rate. Well, when you push atropine, it will only have a positive effect, which means it speeds the conduction velocity from the SA node through the AV node with atropine if it's in zone 1. So I'm going to make a purple check mark here. Beep, beep, atropine will work on zone 1. So if you have a patient that has a Brady dysrhythmia, you know how I said it's at the doc eating? The first thing is atropine. If you push atropine and it works, it was probably a zone 1 problem. Or let's say you have a second degree type 2 when you learn your AV blocks. Atropine may work on some of that. So maybe here. But once you get down to second degree type 2, and this is zone here, and third degree, atropine does not work because there are no parasympathetic innervation, so you can't block any of the parasympathetic response. So there's no way to speed the conduction velocity once you get that low in the AV node. I hope all that makes sense. Even if it doesn't, come listen to it later. Maybe it will. The AV node is really cool. Let me erase all this so we can keep going. So the function of the AV node is best expressed by looking at the P to R interval. It's called a PRI, and it should be 3 to 5 little tiny blocks. If it's longer than that, that means you have some type of a block. And think of those 3 different zones or degrees: first degree, second degree, which is split into 2, and third degree. We'll learn all about AV blocks because I love those. I didn't set a timer this time, so hopefully we won't go over 20 minutes. We probably will. I'm going to do my best. So the PRI tells you how well the AV node is working. The P wave tells you how well the atrium is working. The next thing you have is the QRS complex. That is the movement of electricity from that bundle of his down to the apex of the heart and how it wraps around the heart. Remember, electricity doesn't like to move through damage very well, so it will delay the conduction. And it also, if you have repolarization problems, you can see that in the T wave. But anyway, the QRS complex tells you how well the ventricles are firing off, how well they're depolarizing. It should be nice and tight, you know, at least or less than or equal to 3 little blocks of 0.12. If it's wider than that, then you have some dysfunction in the ventricles, or at least with the movement of electricity. Then the last waveform you have is a T wave, and the T wave is literally just the ventricle repolarizing. I like to think about it like this. Let me go back one. Imagine, you know, you are where you are, where the camera is, and I'm where I'm at, and I set up dominoes all the way back to me, and I'm going to depolarize those dominoes. I kick the first one over, and it's going to go blah, 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 blah. They're going to go really fast towards you and then away from you as the ventricle fires off. Depolarization happens fast. Repolarization takes a minute. Now I got to set each of them up, and I'm getting closer and closer and closer to you, and then I go away from you. So that depolarization wave is the T wave. If you have problems with the T wave, it's problems with metabolic derangement. We'll talk about ST segment elevation and stuff in a little bit. Just know that for now. So put it all together and read these strips. I know Shannon mentioned you guys were going over rate tonight. There's 3 ways to calculate rate. And it's important to at least be aware of all 3 of them, and I'm sure you guys are. You can either do the count the R wave method, which is called the 6 seconds, 6-second R waves, and you multiply that by 10, which seems like the easiest thing to do. So if we were to do this one here, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So about 90. But it's the least accurate method. And why you need to know these other methods is because let's say National Registry throws a strip on your screen and you count the R waves, and there's 6 of them. Well, is the rate 60, which would be a sinus rhythm, or is it 58, which would be a sinus bradycardia? And if you pick the wrong one, you're going to miss the question. So let's say there's 10 of them. Is it 100, which would be a sinus rhythm, or is it 101, which makes it a sinus tachycardia? So the second method is called the big block method. I think I got a slide on it. On the big blocks, that's the 6-second one there. Here's the big block method. You have to basically memorize these numbers. Let me find my cursor. 300, 150, 175, 60. I don't really care about the 50. I know it's there, but once it gets below 60, I know it's Brady. And then you're going to count the big blocks in between these. So this would be 300, 150, 100, 75, just a little bit more than 75. We'll say 76. Counting the big blocks. And then the most accurate method, which is the one you really should know. I mean, you should know this one too, like in the field because it's fast, is the small block method. And that's where you count the small blocks in between the R waves. So in this case, 5, 10, 15, 19. And you divide 1,500 by 19, and you get 78.9. So what I say 76, I wasn't correct. 78.9. So it's basically 79. So that's the most accurate method. So let's say there's 20 blocks, 1,500 divided by 20, it's 75. And you can see that 20 blocks would be 4 big blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, you know what I mean? You should know all 3 methods. Oh, the one time you do use the 6-second method is if you have an irregular rhythm. So if you're looking at AFib or a sinus arrhythmia, then you have to use the 6-second method to do your rate, because the little blocks are going to vary between those R waves. Okay. Oh, so just practice real quick. What's the rate here? If we use the R waves, which we're not, but if we did, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It would be 50. If we use the big block method, I always find one that lines up on a dark line. 300, 150, 175, 60, 50. It's probably like 51. And then if we use the small block method, which is the most accurate, it's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 29. 1,500 divided by 29, it's 52. So the 52 is what that rate actually is. This looks like it's 4 if we use the wrong method, which we're not doing that. If we use the big block, it's going to be, none of them land on a big block. To be one off. 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, 50, and I don't know the number below 50. If we use the small block, which is the most accurate, it would be, we'll say, I'm going to take one away in the end. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 minus 2 is 43. 1,500 divided by 43 is only 35. So the correct rate on that is 35. And you can see if you count the R waves, you come up with 40. Okay, so I think that's enough for now. Let me know what you think.